Hello, I'm Diana Butucariu. I'm a ceramic artist from Bucharest, currently living in Sweden. I'm also a PhD student at the Art University in Bucharest. My research subject is sustainability in ceramic art. Ceramic production, even on the level of an individual artist, touches several of the most pressing environmental issues, including climate change. To produce ceramic pieces, fine and natural resources are mined and sold on a global market. An energy intensive process turns the raw materials into products, often producing toxic waste as a byproduct. Ceramic lasts for thousands of years, but ceramic objects break easily and turn into ceramic garbage, which often ends up in landfill. Every year, the climate crisis that we are facing becomes more and more present in our lives. This summer, for example, large parts of southern Europe have been record warm, while the region of Sweden where I live has had 50 years floods. At the same time, it seems that the problems of the day demand all our attention and prevents us from focusing on taking appropriate action to try to change course. Whether is it war, pandemic or inflation, we are too preoccupied and too divided to put in the energy to do what is needed to improve our relationship with the planet and its ecosystems. Over a number of years, I have had a growing sense of discomfort with the process of making new ceramic pieces. It seems that the world is already too full of things, new things, old things, broken things. For every new exhibition, I make new pieces and they will fill up my studio and my living space. In the first year of my research project, I made pieces using clay which I found around the area where I live. Instead of burning it, I made temporary installations in nature which degrade over time and eventually recombine with the earth. I took inspiration for these pieces from an imagined prehistory of clay art much older than the oldest ceramics we have found. I imagine that the archaeological discoveries simply represent the first time someone dropped one of their figurines into the fire, accidentally turning it into stoneware. To actually make ceramics, clay is burned at high temperatures, transforming it into a stone-like material. This process is a one-direction transformation. Ceramic can't be turned back into clay. Later in my studies, I will investigate how this energy-intensive process can be made with as little impact as possible. But I will also question the modes of consumption of ceramics objects, including in the art world, which encourage the production of ever more ceramic objects. A recurrent theme in my research has been the role of cultural heritage in my life and craft practice. How to preserve cultural heritage and how to learn from it and contribute to it. My work on this theme has led me to the current project. Cultural heritage was defined by the 1972 UNESCO Convention concerning the protection of the world cultural and natural heritage as any monuments, groups of buildings or sites of outstanding universal value from the point of view of history, art, or science. The convention establishes criteria for protecting cultural, human, and natural heritage sites across the ratifying country with the view that deterioration or disaster of any item of the cultural or natural heritage constitutes a harmful impoverishment of the heritage of all nations of the world. Later, this definition was expanded to include Practices, representations, expression, knowledge, skills, as well as the instruments, objects, artifacts, and cultural spaces associated therewith, that communities, groups, and in some cases, individuals recognize as part of their cultural heritage. To safeguard the role of intangible cultural heritage as a mainspring of cultural diversity and as a guarantee of sustainable development. In my master's thesis in 2014 at Konstfack in Stockholm, I wrote about the cultural shock of moving from Romania to Sweden and how that experience made me want to revisit traditional crafts culture in my native country. During the master program, I travel around Romanian villages, documenting and learning from traditional craft practices as well as the culture within which they existed. I ended up using materials and artifacts I acquired on this trip in my work, which was presented alongside the research trip video journal. It was clear to me that this traditional culture and lifestyle, which I have myself grown up with in my grandparents' villages, was vanishing, and I was asking myself and struggling to answer the question of what my responsibility as an aspiring craftsperson was towards the cultural heritage of my native country. In 2018, I did a 1 year research project also at Consfac. In my project, Inside the Circle, Behind the Fence, I documented the history and the deconstruction of the mining town Mambariet in the Swedish Arctic. The town was built to service the mining operation in the area, and eventually it has to be torn down because of the same mine, which was threatening to collapse and swallow the city. When I visited Mambariet for the first time, there was already a huge ravine dividing the town in two parts, and parts of the town were behind the fence. Every year, the fence off area was increased, and people who suddenly found themselves living behind the fence had to move away. The question I was grappling in my work was how to relate to and to build cultural heritage when the geology supporting that culture is undermined. My work was a series of stained glasses with both painted and photograph elements from Mambariet, framed in wood recovered from behind the fence, meaning it would have otherwise disappeared like the rest of the city. My current research is about trying to find the place for my work in between a culture that has existed and a culture that doesn't exist yet, but which seems certain to be very different from the one I have known in my life. In other words, it is about what we do with the cultural heritage we have received, how we become it and transform it through our practice so that future generations may benefit from it. In a context of the looming climate crisis, which may completely disrupt important aspects of human culture, this is not an easy question to answer, but at least it is important enough to give it our best shot.